Railway Conversation with Doc Frank.
Hello, this is another episode of Railway Conversations with Doc Frank. I'm your host of this podcast, Doc Frank himself. And my guest today is Frederic Sancho, originally from France, but now living in London in Great Britain. Frederic has founded a couple of companies in the railway space, first specialized in the testing and commissioning space. I had a few previous episodes on testing and commissioning, which were quite well received. So I hope that this episode will interest you as well. We talk about a number of interesting things, including a railway line from France into London, the creation of a business in the railway space, and a number of other things that I hope you will find of interest. Please enjoy this episode. Hi, it's Doc Frank here. Real quick, I want to let you know about one of the best CBTC trainings in the world, if not the very best, but you always need to be careful with superlatives. It's the CBTC Kickstarter online course. It consists of 30 video lessons. That's the 3 with the 0. In total, over 11 hours of training content, talking about everything from the basics of CBTC, current standards, the benefits of CBTC, the key functionality of it, the supply industry, application tips and tricks, lessons learned, do's and don'ts, case studies, arguably the most comprehensive training that you can find anywhere on the topic of CBTC. There are a few additional things that make learning easier for you that you may not find on any other online courses. One of them being an immersion plan that helps guiding you through the training course and progress it in a finite period of time instead of just having it sit there for months and months on end. There is access to an online study group where you can connect with other students who are doing that training course at the time and form learning groups. There will be live coaching calls once every 2 weeks. And after the training, you will not be on your own. There is an alumni community that allows you to ask questions about the course content on an ongoing basis. So it's basically education for life. You can inform yourself about this training course and register to it on my training portal, which is docfranktraining.podia.com/CBTC Kickstarter -online 2023. I repeat that, docfranktraining.podia.com/CBTC Kickstarter -online 2023. I look forward to seeing you at that training. And until then, please enjoy my upcoming episode of this podcast. Frederic, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Very welcome. I came across you after a recent podcast that I did with Danny O'Connell, and you were one of the persons commenting on it. And what I often do with people commenting on my post, I check them out, I have a look at their profiles, and yours looked so interesting that I thought I would like to follow up with a conversation with you, which is this one here. To kick off, if you were to describe your role in the railway industry with one word, what would that be?
Clearly, I would say innovation or innovator, trying to do with what we have in the railway industry, which is basically an old industry, if you like, but it has a lot of history. What I mean by old is that. But the interesting thing is that we have a lot of opportunities to evolve. And what I've been doing since I've been in the business, learning the trade, obviously, and implementing, we always try to innovate, to do things faster, to do things better. And that's how I would summarize it with one word at this moment.
Good. An innovator. All right. But that's interesting in itself. I mean, innovation in railways is certainly a big thing. As you said, the industry sometimes has a bit of an conservative reputation, to put it mildly, and I think a lot of this has to do with the importance of safety in the railway. So that safety is so paramount because of the catastrophic consequences of rail accidents that it may be that that some people from the outside may consider it to be a bit I don't know, a bit slow, a bit old-fashioned, and maybe not always leading edge when it comes to innovation. So if you consider yourself an innovator, what do you actually do to increase the amount of innovation in our industry?
So effectively, I mean, my background has been, I'm a civil engineer by trade, but I jumped into railway very, very quickly after I graduated and after the military service. And I started my career in the French railway, SNCF, and only came to the UK. Well, it was an opportunity to build the railway to St. Pancras high speed 1, or it was called CTRL at the time, Channel Tunnel Rail Link. I always effectively learn things from the traditional viewpoint of the British Rail or French railways, but in the modern, if you like, era of high speed, for instance, you have to be your mindset has to be more on the innovation part, because it's a kind of different railway than the traditional railway, and you have to be more efficient in whatever you're doing. You have to really think ahead. There are usually large railways, I mean, long distances. So the innovation is at the heart of building high-speed lines. Okay, and I was lucky enough to be part of the team who, with Alstom at the time, Alstom Transport at the time, who were awarded the contract, the second part of the contract on high speed 1. And I was then given the opportunity to join the actual team delivering it. So it was completely unintentional, let's say. And I came to this world of high speed really by chance. So, but then I was supposed to be staying, I was a really junior at the time and no experience of testing and commissioning. But I have to say I was trusted by my boss at the time, who needed someone for the position. So it was a bit of a win-win. He needed someone for the position. He didn't have the opportunity to bring someone with a huge experience. But his plan was that I would stay in the position for 1 or 2 years to do a bit of the paperwork, and then they will replace me with someone, so I would say much older and with a lot of experience in the domain. But because of the project that took probably from 2002 to 2007, roughly, definitely 2007, I had a lot of time on my hands to learn it, if you like, and the opportunity presented itself, and he couldn't see any reason to replace me at the end of the day. So I stayed for the whole duration, but that's how I was bombarded testing commissioning manager. Wow. Okay. That sounds great. Actually, well, that was really scary, but not only my boss trusted me, but there was also a very good relationship, a very well established relationship with the client, which was Rail Link Engineering at the time. And that was made of Bechtel and Sistra and Alcro and a number of others, which I didn't work directly with, but definitely Sistra and Bechtel I worked with them for many years. And they ended up being really, really helpful, which is very rare. That's why probably one of the best feeling I had about the projects is CTRL compared to everything I've done after that. Because there was that sense of achieving something together and not trying to play the commercial aspect of things. too much, if you like. So obviously they were commercial conversations and they were unpleasant conversations, but at the end of the day, achieving the result was more important. I've been on other projects where winning the argument was more important than achieving the project. Okay?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's always good if you focus more on the outcome and put the commercial discussions a bit more in the background. I could imagine that this railway line from the Channel Tunnel to St. Pancras was a pretty special case. So, for example, because of the French high-speed system that was basically extended underneath the channel all the way into London, there's also a French train control system on this line, which is the French TBM system. So I could imagine that it was kind of difficult at times to bring together the very long tradition of the British railway culture with something that by nature has to be very much molded by the French circumstances, how to run a railway. Did you find this kind of split between the French aspects and the British environment?
Yes, I did, and my English colleagues used to joke about it at the end of the day. There's a big joke that one of the big directors, which I'm afraid I forgot the name, was saying at the end of the day. He said, well, there are two ways of building a high-speed line, the wrong way and the French way. And that was a very funny quote. Everyone found it really spot on because there was a lot of, I wouldn't say arrogance, but the French had a system that worked. The British had not a system, didn't have a system that proved that was proven design, if you like. So it created an imbalance. But I found that where the French came with the technology, the English came with a strong health and safety aspect on things. And I think the two together combined very well, and that helped manage a lot of things the way I wouldn't have expected this to work that well, but it did. So at the end of the day, I don't remember having felt any animosity. I mean, it could have been strong at some points with people having strong opinions about how things should work, but we work in good intelligence, and those who were in the know of the technical aspect were left to their own devices, and those who effectively didn't know about much health and safety culture in the UK were effectively left to deal with that. And there was a symbiosis, but no interference. And that's really the lack of interference helped the project along. And I've been on projects where the client, what the client only does is interference instead of doing what they were supposed to do, and the contractor does what they are supposed to do. So CTRL was much more like that. We did what we were supposed to do because we were the so-called experts in the domain, and the clients and other actors did what they did well, and we didn't really told them what to do, and that was reciprocal. So that worked very well.
Yeah, I think from a technology perspective, it should have been almost a no-brainer to extend the French system all the way into St. Pancras, because the high-speed line on the French side already existed, and so the technology was there, the trains were there, train control system fitting the trains was there, and so, as you said, the British at the time didn't have anything equivalent to that. And so any idea to say, yeah, but on the British side of the tunnel, we need to have a different signaling system, I think that would have been a pretty silly proposition in the first place. So maybe this clarity that it just made a lot of sense to continue with the existing French solution all the way for the entire line was helping with that, I could imagine.
Well, we had a lot of interface works to deliver, and that made probably the most interesting part was to deal with all the East Coast mainline connections and stuff like that, and effectively we had to take this into account, and it's the mix of technology like ERM. No, there was nothing special. It was the standard signaling system on those lines, but we had to effectively drop the TVM system at some point and go back to signal sighting stuff, the other side, and we had to organize train crossing across. I mean, trains run across the interface. So that was the fun part, because running the trains up to the maximum speed, and I even have a video of that night where we run to the maximum speed and the 10% over speed, which used to be the norm. At least it was the norm until the accident on the French east line. So we used to do 10% over speed, but all of that we had to replicate at much smaller speed, obviously, at the interfaces. And so we obviously had the very slow one, like the Temple Mills Depot. That was an interface at Stratford Box. And we also had a lot of interfaces with existing lines within the St. Pancras area. So we had to innovate. I mean, that's why innovation is really at the heart of the kind of mindset I was describing at the beginning, because we never did that before. And we had to say, okay, what do you know about these extensions, the North Kent line at Dagenham and so on and so forth? And they have to merge one way or another at Triple Lane. They have to merge with the rest of the railway, and the rest of the railway is kind of French technology. So what do we do? So it was a constant brainstorming of those ideas. For the most part, people were kind of working in silos because it's the nature of the beast. But we were then able to sit down at the same table and say, okay, you've done that for a year, which is what you were supposed to do, and this is purely British railway kind of technology. That's fine. And now we have been doing that on the other side, which is mainly French technology as well, high-speed line. And how are we going to interface and make it work? And because of the success that CTRL was, we can definitely say it worked. I mean, the way we worked and anticipated the tests across the interface, because they were power tests or power loss tests or transfer signaling tests, telecoms tests. So we did all of those using a train or using a class, I think it was a class 66 at the time, or another kind of locomotive, to go, not 666 because they were to be electrical. So forgive me, I don't remember the number or the reference of the train. But we used different type of trains to do the testing. And all that was, okay, thinking out of the box. What are we going to do to test this interface? So I really started with innovating right from the beginning. There was no choice because it was new, if you see what I mean. So not new, like section 1 was already on the way, which stopped at single well. And we were only doing, if I may say, single well to St. Pancras. So we had Ebbsfleet Station and Stratford Station in the middle. And we had colleagues from AmexP doing channel tunnel to single well, if you like. So they were already doing all of those things. And they were effectively learning by mistakes as well. And we were capitalizing on their mistake with the section 2. Saying, okay, they did that, it didn't really work. So how can we innovate and change things? So section 2 was even more powerful, more engaged, and the lessons learned were from from section 1 were really helpful.
Yeah, lessons learned are a great thing if they are really applied. Yeah, I mean, everybody's talking about this, but not everybody is actually doing it. Yeah, yes. And so sometimes you find that projects they do some lessons learned at the beginning, where they actually collect all the material and they may even read the material, but then when it comes to implementing, things are just are being forgotten, or they keep doing things that they did it before.
The difference with Section 1 is that you had people transferring from the client from Section 1 to Section 2 with all that luggage of experience. It's not always, it's easier to do that from part 1 to part 2 of the same project than to do it from project A to project B, if you understand what I mean. Although the intention is there, people who've been on project A are often involved with project B, but B is a different beast. People don't want to listen. But phase 1 to phase 2, people listen because it was the same project.
Yeah, but you may have a different problem then, that that the people coming over from phase 1 to phase 2, in order to learn lessons, first and foremost, they need to admit that something that they did previously wasn't perfect and can be improved. And depending on the egos involved, that may be difficult for some people. And some, I've seen people getting very defensive, and basically trying to pretend that they've done everything correct and everything perfect, even though everybody around them could see that it can be improved. It can be done better the second time around.
Indeed, but that happens. But it's only a few personalities. I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by people of value, at least during that time at CTRL, and even if we had what we could say a kind of an aggressive client. I mean, Bechtel is not known to be soft on anything, but that Bechtel I've experienced, at least on that project, they were smart people, and they were engaged, and they were considering that if we failed, they would fail. And that was really a strong view. It's not been the case almost everywhere else I worked after that. Quite the contrary. But that project, that was a kind of a landmark project for that reason. So at the time, in terms of companies, etc., I was employed, and I'd been employed for nearly, I don't know, eight years. And it's only when we completed CTRL, and I was lucky enough to be the testing commissioning manager, so you kind of the last man standing.
Yes.
So I was lucky to be there at the very beginning, because I had been part of the contract, the bidding team, and I saw it until the very end. That was quite a long time if you think about it. And that gave me the opportunity to meet incredible people, obviously French people, but British people as well, obviously. And when I completed my time there, when the team disbanded, and we all shake hands and say, "Well, what a job well done!" and the Queen went to visit St. Pancras, so it was really complete. We then decided, well, do we stay in the UK? I had a young daughter at the time, and my wife was in the UK with me at the time. And we decided, well, you know what, maybe there'll be opportunities, and they presented themselves. So I went to work on the East London Line project after that. So it was quite convenient, because the East London Line project was also based in London, obviously, as the name suggests, and it was the next big thing in town. And the director of the East London Line, on the contracting side, which was Balfour Beatty and Carillion, the defunct Carillion at the time, which was called the BBC JV at the time. The director was the actual project director, who completed the job at CTRL, or who was there for a long period of time before moving to the East London Line. So I got a call one day. He came actually on the trains. That was when it was still possible to bring families on board to do some test runs at high speed, just to show them while we were coming late in the morning after a long day of work. So we had the opportunity to bring the families and friends, and we brought him back. He had left the project 6 months before that. We brought him back, and on that occasion, he said, "Well, I need someone like you for the East London line." So I was offered to move there, and then the opportunity presented itself to say, "Well, do I go there as an employee, or what's the trick?" Because that's the UK, that different perspective. I'm really interested in going the extra mile beyond the just employment business thing and see what's there. And he said, "Well, I don't mind if you want to set up a company. You know a lot of people. You have obviously a lot of decent knowledge from CTRL. So if you want to do that, be my guest." So it was really open-minded. And I said, "Well, in that case, I will set up a company." And that's how the whole thing started, really. With that, things evolved from a one-man company. I think at the end of the East London Line project, we had like 15 people on our books. So it was an interesting learning curve as well for me, because I was really excited about entrepreneurship, but I was not really knowledgeable. I mean, I had read a lot of books. I was ready in my head to jump, and I took the risk at the time, because my wife said, "Look, it's up to you. If you want to do that, just be mindful that we may have to pack within 2 months of starting the job, because they got rid of you, and that's going to be hard." But we were kind of young and foolish, so I took the risk, and I never regretted it, basically.
Okay. I'm quite surprised that your project manager on East London Line gave you that choice, because very often, especially for government-led projects, they prefer very much people to get on board as an employee, as a government employee, because usually the salaries are lower compared to bringing contractors in. So was that not an issue, or did you basically calculate your remuneration in line with what would have been an employment contract?
I should have been clearer. I was not effectively working for TfL. I was working for the contractor, which itself had been awarded the contract. So there was a gap. They could do whatever they wanted. You're right. It would have been completely different, and probably not impossible, because on the client side, so TfL side, there were a lot of contractors. You would be surprised by the number of contractors who are actually contracted by organizations like TfL, London Underground. They've done that for years, and we're still working. My other company, Free ECO, is working on the Elizabeth line, for instance, now, and we are a subcontractor to the Elizabeth line. So these mechanisms exist, and you're right. There are situations where it's not ideal, and they prefer not to. And if that's the case, we're happy to not to work there. But it's the fact that we are kind of a niche company as well. We specialize in things that others don't do, or don't do as well, I would say, and it's difficult to find someone. I mean, you won't find people like us under every stone you turn, in the UK in particular. So the East London Line was one of those opportunities where I had that background, thanks to the construction and commissioning of the CTRL, and I capitalized on that background, and then made a lot of friends and colleagues from that time. And at some point on that project, and with the complete agreement of project directors and so on and so forth, needs were created themselves. Like, oh, we need this. Where are we going to find that resource? And that's where the company I was managing at the time grew with that specialism in mind. Okay, specialist people that you don't find at every corner of the town. So we started helping them. I mean, it was kind of it was not by design. At the beginning, I thought I would be like any other contractor on my own, on the day rate and full stop. But I don't know, probably my appetite for entrepreneurship, which I always envisaged as something interesting to do at some point in my career, and the opportunity that they were looking for people they couldn't find, and I could find them, if you like, created that momentum. So that's how the company grew from 1 to 15, basically, throughout.
Let's just stay there for a moment, because what I basically heard you saying is that you somehow got resources on board that others couldn't get on board. So
and difficulties finding, yes.
Yeah. So how did you do that? I mean, if these resources are so specialized and so rare on the market, and basically nobody else could find them, how did you find them, especially in those numbers? I mean, from 1 to 15, that's quite an enormous growth. And I guess at the beginning they were all working around you on testing and commissioning topics. Is that right?
Well, I made a lot of contacts from CTRL. If the Channel Tunnel Railing project had not existed for me, the next phase of creating and growing a business would not have been possible, period. Okay. In that context, obviously, resources are scarce, but they do exist. Now, what most people tend to forget is that if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. Okay? So in our line of field, we pay good money, which means we don't make that much money ourselves as a company. But we are organizing ourselves so that the overheads are limited. Okay? We don't have a fancy business office in the city of London. We don't. Our office is in Whitney, in a very nice village outside Oxford, where the prices are really different than London, for instance. And that's one example among many where we effectively do things in a certain way, and our margin. Obviously, people believe we are kind of very wealthy people, but in reality, we're doing well, but we're doing well because we treat people well. And those resources, which are specialist resources, I can tell you, they wouldn't argue with me on the podcast. They are paid a very good price, and that's why we can get them. That's why we can, and we. Not only we pay them well, we also treat them like human beings, which seems obvious, but it's not that obvious. And that's important. I think beyond the wages, the guys are also responding to the way you treat them, the way you care, the way you effectively ask about, is everything at home all right? Sometimes you can see some change in behavior. Immediately we don't let that rot somewhere for months or weeks. We get involved, and yes, it takes time. It takes I would say energy, but that's the only way I can do it, or we can do it now. I'm not the only one.
And the thing is, it takes even more time and energy if you don't treat your people right and they're leaving and you need to find new ones. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think there are studies after studies out there saying that this human element of a job is in fact more important than the salary. That doesn't mean that you can pay them peanuts, but if there's a healthy combination of that human aspect and a decent salary, then people tend to be very loyal. Yeah, especially if the work is interesting as well. So there are a number of components which come together. I had to smile earlier when you said those who pay peanuts are only getting monkeys, because that was going through my head already earlier when you were talking about the difference between government salaries and being a contractor. I mean, this quote not only applies for you as a company trying to retain your employees, that also applies to whoever your client is getting yourself and your resources. And it's the same thing. And I believe that many projects really overlook this, that they try to get people on the cheap. Like they want to have top level experts, but then they expect them to work for a fraction of what they would normally get in other projects. And then they're surprised when they don't get this expertise. And then they basically settle for people with a lot of less experience who are willing to work for the lower salaries. I don't really think that's a very good way of handling a project. I think if you really have a sophisticated project, you also need at least a minimum, like a core team of really experienced specialists.
Yeah,
and in order to get those specialists on board, you also need to pay them decent money, because otherwise they just go elsewhere where they are paid better, right?
Well, I think when I was on CTRL, I was on the other side of the spectrum. I was kind of green to this. I had not done it before. I was lucky enough to be put in the position to learn, surrounded by a client who was extremely technically sound. So I learned from them more than I learned from my own company. Okay, I learned from the client. I learned from Bechtel. I learned from Sistra in particular. So I absorbed everything they were happy to share, and they were happy to share. So I was very fortunate in that respect. But I also learned that you can also give opportunities to people that do not meet the specialist criteria always. Okay. However, as you said yourself, a core team of people who know what they're talking about is essential. But that core team doesn't have to be expensive in terms of expanding. It doesn't have to be big. It has to be right. And then you have to populate the rest of the seats around the table with people like I was one day, which was a bit green, but willing, with a lot of appetite to learn. You have to make good choices if you're going to recruit people who are kind of young and inexperienced, and that's very often a gut feeling you get or you don't get. Now, my own experience, and it's silly because it's a kind of a Murphy law that is repeating itself. People do not want to spend the money until they have no choice. What I mean by that is that very often you have months of procrastinations, months of even a year or so of procrastination. Oh, we're not going to spend that kind of money. There's no way we're going to get that specialist in, blah, blah, blah. And I can understand where they're coming from, because I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I want to be sure when I do the same thing that my choice or my decision is really value for money, because it's expensive, okay? But the reality is they wait until it's impossible to do otherwise, and then suddenly the price has doubled, okay? So they didn't really make any good investments. They made an expensive investment, because at the end of the spectrum, people tend to be rarer than they were before. And the one you can find is say, well, I was happy to come for, I don't know, £500 a day. Now I'm happy to come for £750 a day. And then you have no choice. So planning and budget planning is one of those. sometimes you want to save the pennies without realizing it's going to cost you a fortune in the long run. In particular with testing and commissioning, which is my core, not the core business, because we're doing so many other things, but it's how I've been involved myself on the tools, if you prefer. And this is a complex thing. I mean, you had Danny O'Connell on the podcast, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is not a simple job. Managing this takes a lot of insights, and you have to be really knowledgeable. But the reality is, you don't get that kind of knowledge and specialism for free or for little money. But if you engage with those people and effectively you pay expensive rates, or you pay market rates, shall I say, instead, then you get better results. So instead of spending years debugging something or wasting time sending people to correct stuff, you've done it right first time, or at least close to first time. And the difference between the two is people in the know versus people with little knowledge, etc. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying automatically if someone is expensive, they are better at the job. It's not true. But there is a fine balance to find.
Yeah, what you said about finding the right people, I think that's really important, because I mean, you could bring somebody in who is very specialized in certain areas, but they are not willing to share their knowledge with others, or they are not very good at training or coaching others. And if somebody has potential like you had when you joined CTRL, you still needed the people to learn from. So you still needed to have good people around you, which had the experience and the knowledge that you needed to learn. But secondly, they were also willing and capable of transferring that knowledge to you, or explain it in a way, or show you in a way that you were able to learn and then become a specialist yourself. And I think this is really the key, to find people who not only have the experience, but also the mindset of transferring their knowledge to others, and not just keeping it for themselves because they think that secures them further orders in the future. Knowledge transfer from the more experienced people to the less experienced people is absolutely critical in a project, because you need to grow your base. You need to grow the expertise in the entire team, especially with the younger people.
And we are not getting any younger as well. So I'm considering myself on the other side. I'm not yet 50, but I'll be 50 this year. And I've met fantastic young people who really have the opportunity, who really have the potential, not always the opportunity. And I understand when they make choices where they change career and they go far away, potentially to find the job that suits them. I would really encourage them to do that. I mean, I went where I was. It was kind of a succession of luck in opportunities for me. But I always tend to say that you have to find and push for your own luck. And if there is something somewhere that is going to give you the opportunity to learn, it may be a bit painful. You may be far away from your family at times. It may be unconventional places, unfamiliar places and faces, but that's how you're going to grow most and faster. To be fair, or you could stay in a comfortable place and never going to learn to do more than what you already know, or very little beyond that. So again, in the business of small SMEs in the railway industry, which is really the topic you wanted to talk about, it's really, for us, it's really about being specialized in something in particular that other people don't do or not do as well, and demonstrating reliability. We have to be we have large clients. I mean, one of the largest clients we get is Hitachi. Another one is Rail for London Infrastructure. So they are large clients. And when we make a mistake, and we do make mistakes, I mean, this is a fact of life, we are always forthcoming about them. We say, wait, sorry, raise our hand. We did something. We did something here which wasn't good, and we fix it. So you give your client the opportunity to see that you're genuine about your values. Yes, you are coming with a price tag, but do they sleep better at night? I think they do, even if they don't tell you directly and all the time. You can sense it. You can sense that when we are at the helm and a train can't be delayed, a train that will carry passengers and a lot of money associated with not running, then they rely on us to do things, to fix it, to fix problems that may arrive, because we're into maintenance and isolations and stuff like that. So you fix stuff on the go. That's how you build a reputation, and that's how, by being reliable and honest, you can go very far. I mean, to be fair, a colleague reminded me not so long ago that when I was on a Crossrail project, he came to the project and was desperate to get some help, and I didn't know who he was, honestly. I had no idea who he was, and he was looking for some support, and he had been finding closed doors for a while. Then he found my door, and it was open, if you like. And I said, "Yeah, we're going to do something for you. Either we're going to escort you or give you the access you need, whatever." And to be fair, we were just being normal people, helping others. Okay, despite the enormous amount of pressure we had at the time to get that project running. And I had completely forgotten about it. And only very recently, when he left the project as a commercial person, he came back to me and said, "Thank you for all the time, and you may not remember that, but you helped me." And I knew I was not making a big decision when we decided to try to see if you could help us later on, many years or several years later. I said, "Oh, wow, you talk about the butterfly effect, you do something here and you effectively may be able to get some opportunity later on, although none of that was connected and none of that was intentional, but people remember when you are honest with them, helpful. These are, you would say, well, okay, that's the usual value. I'm not going to say you have to be not trustworthy and a thief, and obviously not. But if you go the extra mile with people, and it doesn't cost you anything, to be honest, start with a smile to start with. Usually, it goes a long way. You get somewhere, and you kind of surprise yourself many years later when people just tell you that's what they believe happened for them. So I find it really important, in particular for small businesses, to be extremely reliable, trustworthy, and honest, and that pays dividends, really.
Yeah, it's the old saying, what goes round comes round. Yeah, that's the So you worked on East London Line, you created your first company, you grew to 15 people. Everything seemed to look good. What made you start a second business?
Well, the second business only started in 2018. With the first business, the East London Line, when I had to learn, and when the East London Line came to an end, we had to find work for other people, and we couldn't keep the 15. That's where I started realizing it's going to be difficult if I am at the forefront of the business and doing the job myself on the tools. you don't really have a lot of time to strategically plan for the business. And the day the project ends, you may not have another thing coming. And then you have to effectively tell a lot of those people you had with you that there's no work anymore. So at the end of the East London line, we were, again, I wouldn't say lucky, because we worked very hard on the East London line and people noticed, the client noticed. And we were offered the opportunity to join Balfour Beatty, Power Services, whatever it was called at the time, to do the phase 1A extension of the East London line. So the East London line was phase 1, and we did that. And after we completed this, we had the opportunity to go and keep some of the people, build new people, or work with other people for the phase 1A, which was Dalston Junction beyond to connect to the North London line or something like that. And we had the electrical works there, substation works. So that gave us an opportunity. But effectively, that was almost the end of the first company, because after that, I was called to Crossrail. Okay, after the East London line, I was called to Crossrail, and I had to. And Crossrail was a completely different environment. You couldn't really use your company for anybody else than yourself. So at the end, the company continued to do works elsewhere. So in parallel, we had work at the DLR Line 6 at Stratford International, and that was a Volker Rail job that was done in relation to the Olympics. So that was probably 2011. They were a bit late there when we arrived, and that's a kind of a nice conversation to have as a separate postcard about what to do if you haven't, what can happen if you haven't really invested in the right core team, and then it's a year behind and you still have the core, not the core team. So we were called there. I built a dedicated team for the DLR6. And at the same time, I was kind of juggling with Crossrail. And then after the DLR6, the company had only one person, and it was me. So it went from 15 to 1, or from 1 to 15 to 15 to 1. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's where I said, well, something is obviously not really working. I can't be honest with myself and say that I can do the two things at once. Either I'm a simple contractor or an employee, or I am a business owner and I can't be delivering works at the very same time I'm doing the business works. And Crossrail was an obvious way of demonstrating that, because there was too much. So by the end of 2011, we dismantled the team, and then I worked full-time myself for Crossrail until 2018. And then 2018, learning from those lessons, and having worked and met a number of people, my two co-founders at the East London line first and then Crossrail second, we decided, you know what, time has come for me to effectively end the relationship with Crossrail. It was becoming particularly nasty and awful at that time, 2018. So I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to get out of there. And within months, my other colleague went as well. And within a year or two, the third co-founder left. So by 2019, we were completely free of the Crossrail drama, if you like. And so I started setting up the company in 2018 with the three directors, if you like, or three members. And that's how it's all started to take to a completely different level, because my intention was clearly not to return to the tools, if you see what I mean, and to be completely focused on delivering the works as a business owner. And same for my colleague, my all other colleague, the number three, where there are three of us, stayed on the tools for longer, and he's still doing stuff directly because he's a younger generation, and he probably have more time available. But my other colleague and myself, we've decided to be 100% dedicated to the company itself. And that made a huge difference. So we've been able to grow the company exponentially between 2018 and 2023. So that was, I can tell you, that was the right decision. But it's easier said than done. If you are young, you have a family to feed, you can't just go business owner full time and there's no revenue for a year. How are you going to be able to absorb that? From having built the first company, the company had a lot of cash at bank, if you like. I was not splashing on fancy cars and fancy gadgets. So the first company had plenty to sustain me and my family between 18 and the year the new company for ECO managed to get its first contract, or first reasonably large contract, and then second and third contracts, etc. The first company managed to plug the gap, if you like, with the cash that had been made in the early days from 2007 onwards. And now the first company is being used as a holding company, no more. So the real business of testing, commissioning, project management, training, we do a lot of training, and maintenance and operations, that's the new company 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it, really. That's the way it evolves. I mean, the lesson from that is, if you can, at some point in your life, if you're interested as an entrepreneur, you need to read a lot of books about how it works, about even the boring stuff, the boring accountancies stuff that are really indispensable, how the tax system works. All of that, you better engage with it. It's a core, but it's really important. And beyond that, you need to have built a bit of wealth so you can afford to be off work until it becomes a thing, if it ever becomes a thing. So the difference with us is that we had a lot of experience from CTRL onwards. My colleagues from even before that, one of the co-founder is 72 or 73 years old. So it tells you he has a lot of experience. He did 40 years career at London Underground. So we came with a huge amount of experience, and that's why it's easier and more credible when you set up a company late in the day to have clients that believe you can do it as well, obviously.
Okay, excellent. Well, I found this very interesting. It's not very often that you talk to a serial entrepreneur in the railway space, and I think with founding two companies, you certainly qualify for that term, serial entrepreneur. So looking at the time, I would like to wrap it up, and thank you very much for your time and for explaining a few tips and tricks, what to look out for when creating a company. I believe to have people with different skills on board is very important, and also people with different preferences, because not every aspect of running a company can be done equally well by a single person. Thinking about finances, thinking about business development, thinking about human resources, payroll, all these kind of stuff are not everybody's business. And having various skills through various people on the team certainly helps a lot. And I think that's an important takeaway if you want to build a bigger company and not just a one-man show where you selling your own labor. So thanks again.
Thank you.
And was a pleasure to have you on the talk. And to all the listeners, I hope you found this to be another very worthwhile episode. If you liked it, then check out the other ones as well and consider subscribing and telling your friends about it. And as usual, I'm closing with keep it simple and bye for now.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Hi, it's Doc Frank again, real quick before you head off. If you are a fan of communications-based train control, or short CBTC, there's an event coming up in September that you absolutely don't want to miss. It's the first virtual global CBTC conference. It's called CBTC World Summit 2023, and it's happening on the 20th and the 21st of September. There will be 3 sessions of about 6 hours duration each for 3 different global regions, one for Asia Pacific, one's for North and South America, and one's for Europe and the Middle East. So wherever you are in the world, one of those sessions will be during the daytime in your time zone, and you can watch it live for the full 6 hours with 6 presentations. The kicker about this is that all other presentations, including the ones from your own session, will be available for replay via recordings. So that means that if the other session should be in the middle of your night, you can still watch it on demand at a time that's more convenient for you and doesn't interfere with your good night's sleep. The conference is available for registration right now at my training portal under docfranktraining.podia.com/summit23. I repeat that, docfranktraining.podia.com/summit23. I'm putting a lot of effort into this conference. It will be an absolute blockbuster event, and I very much hope to see you there. Until then, keep it simple and bye for now. Hey, Doc Frank here, host of the Railway Conversations podcast. Thank you for listening.